Notoriously difficult to play, the undisputed crown jewel of Irish traditional music, and an instrument of great mystery and misunderstanding. Join me as I talk you through the UILLEANN pipes, explaining the various components, tracing the history, and giving you a few insights in what it's like to actually love and play this instrument for over 21 years. My name's Jason Royce, and this is my slice of the internet where I get to talk about UILLEANN pipes and tin whistles and Irish traditional music in general. And thank you for joining me today. And like I said, we're going to take a little look at the UILLEANN pipes today. The first thing I want to talk about is the actual components of the instrument. So it's a bit of an interesting instrument in the fact that you can buy it sort of modular. So you can start with a bag, bellows and chanter, you can add drones later, you can add regulators later, you can add 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And if your only experience with bagpipes is the tartan variety, the Great Highland bagpipes, the sort of Scottish variant of the instrument, you might be interested to know that the UILLEANN pipes are played with a bellows that goes under your arm. And this is not uncommon. There's other bagpipes out there, of course, that use bellows, but it is the bellows that give the UILLEANN pipes their distinctive name as well. So the sort of contemporary name that we use for the UILLEANN pipes comes from the Irish word for elbow. UILLEANN is elbow, and then you use your elbow to blow the air into the instrument instead of blowing into it with like a mouthpiece, that sort of thing. And there's a number of benefits to this as well, of course. The fact that you can sing when you're playing, probably most famously by the McPeaks in Belfast. Will you go, lassie, go? You can also, and I have been known to do this as well, you can also take a drink while you're playing too. And another aspect of the instrument that's actually really useful to know about as well is the bag. And this is the sort of standard UILLEANN pipes bag here. This is a bag for a practice set. So we have a blowpipe at the bottom, which links up with the bellows, and then the air fills up the bag and then feeds through the top, and you put the bag under your arm over here and you give it a squeeze, and then the noise comes out. So this is a chanter here, and it's a very, very complicated bit of equipment here actually. Maybe this one is more complicated than others. The fingers go on the top here, and they sort of come down in the notes in a descending order. It's a little bit like a tin whistle. The fingering is different, you know. The most notable part is that you have a thumb note on the back for a D. You actually use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fingers on it, because the bottom ones are different notes as well. The fingering is different, but it sort of follows a similar-ish pattern. And the other thing about it as well is we have another note at the bottom here, this hole at the bottom of the chanter. When you take it off the knee, it plays a D, the bell note. Then you can put it back on and then play the rest of the notes. A little bit like tin whistle. A bit more complicated than that though, isn't it? And not every chanter has these as well, but these are keys on this one, and they give you the in-between notes. Like for example, this one down here, this gives me an F natural note. If I needed that, like maybe some D minor type things, you know, or like a G sharp or a B flat. And then the one at the back gives you an upper octave C. So one of the nice unique things about the UILLEANN pipes chanter is you can overblow it, so you can give a bit more pressure, and then it forces the reed to jump to an upper octave, so you have an incredible range of notes really on these here. Yeah, you can go from like the bottom note, which is typically a D, all the way up to a middle D, which you play with your thumb, and then there's one above that which you could do with some fingering, and then you could even go up to an E, an F sharp, and a G above that on some chanters. It's kind of a rarity, but yeah, 2.5 octaves out of this here, compared to most bagpipes where you get a single octave basically. So, and it's all down to the reed in it as well. The reed is essentially a double reed in that we have 2 pieces of wood that sort of flap together really, really fast. And that gives you the sound that comes out of it. So I've got my full set here, and the other components that we have, the bag over here as usual, but we have a big stock that comes out which holds the rest of the components of the pipes. And along the bottom here you can see I have these sort of bits coming out here. These are the drones. They give you that beautiful velvety sort of carpet drone that's associated with most bagpipes. So we have the drones coming out the bottom. We have a little one, a medium one, and a big one. And the big one is kind of a really interesting innovation on the UILLEANN pipes. We have a big one that comes down here, spins back on itself here with a little S, and then comes out the bottom, and then it actually folds back on itself again and then terminates out here. 3 drones, they all play the root note, the D, and they play them in different octaves. So the little one is the top, and then an octave below, and then an octave below that. The other interesting feature of the UILLEANN pipes, and what makes it a full set, is the addition of these keyed parts here. These are essentially chanters. They have keys which you can press, and when you press that, it opens the holes for you. And yeah, like I said, you got they're basically chanters. You have a little one, a medium one, and then a big one, which starts up here and goes all the way down to the bottom here. And they basically give you the same notes that you would get on a chanter. And if you play them with your wrist across, they can normally give you chords. If you play 2 together or 3 together, they had a nice sort of either a rhythmic accompaniment or a lovely little sort of harmonic, almost sort of organ kind of sound. I'll put the pipes together and I'll give you a demonstration so you know what they sound like together. Okay, here we go. A bit further back, you can see what I'm doing. So like I said, bellows, these are tied around your waist with a belt. Make sure you get them on comfy, tied in nicely. And they typically have a belt around the other side as well. I just have a string on mine, which I find a little bit easier, but people like a belt as well, whatever you fancy. And then you bring the body of the pipes over your lap, and we have a little pipe that attaches on the inside, which allows you to plug it into the bellows. And then the bellows will inflate the bag. If I just stop the end of it here, you can see I can pop up the bag. And with the drones, you can turn them off and on with a little switch here at the top, which is quite nice. So you don't always have to have the drones on. You can turn them off depending on how you want to go. Yeah. And the regulators, you can play with your wrist as you're playing, or you can play with your fingers as well. There we go. And before I get to the chanter, there's something that's really, really important I need to tell you about as well. This here is a piece of leather, and it's called a popping strap or a piper's apron, and it's used over your leg like that, and whenever you're playing the chanter, it forms a seal at the bottom, so you can play the extra secret note that UILLEANN pipes have that they don't want to tell anyone else about. The original alternative to music. Silence. Basically, you can close the chanter off in between notes by just like covering all the holes and then putting it on your knee like that, and then as you squeeze, you get nothing coming out. Like I said, there's a couple of octaves, 2.5 octaves in there. And you can use those sort of silent notes to give you like a bit of an interesting sort of sound, you know, like do for triplets. Those little sort of staccato triplets. It's a very characteristic thing of the UILLEANN pipes. And maybe just the demonstration of the whole thing together. Yeah, so we have the chanter, we have the regulators, and then the drones, all going together. You're sort of tapping your foot, you're pumping with the bellows, you're squeezing the bag, you're doing all the tricky stuff with your fingers, you're doing the regulators, you got the drones going. It's like rubbing your belly and patting your head and driving a car at the same time. I don't know. Anyway, that's how the instrument works. Let's take a wee look at how we got here, the history of the instrument. So pretty much every country has a bagpipe. If you are from a country, feel free to Google it and see if you have a bagpipe or not. Maybe you've got 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4. Some countries are more than others, they're just hoarding them, I suppose. The origins of bagpipes, they probably go back to the olden days and probably came from the Middle East. But the first sort of evidence we have of piping in Ireland would be from the sort of 1500s, where they would have had these sort of war pipes, not like the uilleann pipes whatsoever. The uilleann pipes would have came from an instrument called the pastoral pipes, which would in themselves been an evolution of the Baroque oboe. In the old days, somebody would have had an oboe, and they had this genius idea of, what do we do with an oboe? Can we add it to a bag? Can we add drones? Can we make a brand new bagpipe? And that's exactly what happened. So the closest relative maybe of the modern uilleann pipes is the oboe. But the pastoral pipes were kind of interesting in that they had the long chanter, and then they had a foot joint at the bottom. And somewhere along the line, somebody decided, you know what we need to do? We need to take off that foot joint, and then that's going to give us a shorter chanter with the bottom that we can put on our knees. And then we can close off the chanter and have a much sweeter variety of tones, and we can also get that beautiful silence in between them for the staccato type stuff. In the old days, they would have been called the Union pipes or the Irish bagpipes, and they didn't really have that name yet. The idea of uilleann pipes being called uilleann pipes is actually kind of a relatively modern thing. And around this time, we sort of see the regulators coming in as well. You know, maybe just one regulator at the start, and then adding an extra row, and then a third one, sometimes a fourth, sometimes a fifth. Like the biggest set I've ever seen has 6 regulators. At the time, I suppose, yeah, they would have been a bit of a niche instrument, and even probably more so than now. And they would have been only really affordable by the gentry. They would have been really like a parlour instrument that would have cost a year, 2 years' wages for a normal person. So there was completely out of the range from anyone who wanted to actually play them. They would have been reserved to the lords and ladies of the land, basically, to commission these instruments and to be able to afford them. And this brings us into the sort of the golden age of the instrument, sort of, 1830s, 40s. Makers like Coyne and Cana in Ireland, and then in England we have like Michael Egan, or makers like Robert Reed, throwing out some fantastic, beautiful instruments of the highest quality and detail and workmanship. Absolutely unbelievable stuff. And this is maybe a nice example of what like a golden era sort of set would look like. So we have silver, ivory, ebony, some very, very fancy woods, fancy materials, everything very, very beautiful. This is a modern reproduction, but I do have some bits and pieces from that sort of era as well. And we can see this would be like one of the chanters, so very, very long. Lots of like fancy keys, beautiful work. Yes, love it. It's slightly after this time that we have a bit of a tragedy happening in Ireland, where we have the famine and mass immigration. Everyone's either leaving Ireland or they're dying, unfortunately. So we have a steep decline in the instrument, and it only really picks up again in the sort of at the end of the century, where we have 2 brothers who immigrated from Drogheda, moved over to the United States, eventually settling in Philadelphia. They were called the Taylor brothers. William and Charles Taylor, and they kind of reinvented the instruments. And this is an instrument by the Taylor brothers, so they sort of changed everything. They made the chanters a lot shorter, a lot louder, and kind of had these really cool keys, that were really robust, sort of industrial sheet metal work. And this is a double chanter, so you can see we have two sets of holes the whole way down. Played the same note twice. Yeah, why not? We had a lot of people who'd moved from Ireland, and they wanted a bit of Irish music to help them remember the old land. One particular outlet for this would have been the vaudeville scene over in America. You have pipers, again, a sort of superstar in his day called Patsy Toohey. He was absolutely fantastic piper, and we have recordings of him that you can have a listen to and everything. Absolutely brilliant, stunning work. Yeah, the Taylor brothers, they sort of reinvented the instrument into a bit more like what we know it these days. There was a demand for louder instruments and perhaps maybe even more robust instruments, and the Taylor brothers, they made the instruments a bit shorter so that they were higher pitched, which also had the benefit that you could play with other instruments. So if you were playing in a group, an ensemble, hadn't really been done before, and then making them a bit louder as well as a consequence by like opening up the inside of the bore of the chanter. And that sort of gave us the template for the modern instruments, sort of pitched in the key of D, a relatively louder sound, so you could fill a room. If you were playing on a stage, people could hear you at the back, that sort of thing. And also in a way that you could play with other musicians as well, which is quite handy, I suppose, if you're into that kind of thing. And at the turn of the century, it's kind of a weird time. We have in Ireland, we have there was like a collective term named for Irish pipers, around that time, which was a poverty of pipers, which is not quite a nice thing to mention, but maybe it's kind of rings true today with how much the instruments cost and all that sort of stuff. And we had a lot of pipers around that time, and we actually seen maybe for the first time some female pipers. We have like, you know, Mae McCarthy, who was a famous young piper around those days and did tours all around the place and was very, very well respected. And we have other pipers who are sort of coming up around the sort of 20s and 30s. Maybe the main one would be a fella called Leo Rosen, who was a piper and pipe maker in Dublin, and he made the pipes, he taught the pipes, and he performed regularly. I remember bringing home a set of Leo's pipes back home to Ireland. I was showing my granddad, and he would have remembered Leo being on the radio whenever he was a child. So it was like, oh wow, yeah, these are from Leo Rosen. Very, very cool, very cool. So Leo he wasn't the only person making at the time, but he was making a lot, and he was teaching, and he was very, very influential. And maybe we'll see in a minute, because a lot of the people who played uilleann pipes and brought it back into vogue in the 60s and 70s played Leo sets as well. So we'll see that in a second. And we've got some other pipers from that era as well, not just Leo Rosen. We've got big hitters like Seamus Ennis with his beautiful flat sounding pipes. We've got Johnny Dorn with his wild traveller music. Maybe my favourite, who was kind of a mixture of the two of them, a piper called Willie Clancy from Milton Malby in County Clare. They're all worth checking out. But the instrument was in dire needs, and all the uilleann pipers from around Ireland got together in the 1960s and decided to form a group called NPU Uilleann, which literally means the uilleann pipers. And they charged themselves with the preservation of the instrument, so things like putting out a manual on how to make the uilleann pipes, running lessons and self-help groups. They're called channels, where all the pipers get together and from a region or whatever, and then they talk about pipes and play pipes together and teach each other and help each other out, that sort of thing. And the people that are still going today, and they're still supporting the instruments in a massive way. Following the folk revival in the 70s, we see a lot of bands dipping into the pipes as like their main sound. Like we have bands like the Chieftains, Blankstee, or the Bothy Band. Maybe those are the big three of like Irish traditional music in those days. And that led to a big interest in and a big drive in people trying to get into the instrument as well. And it was a bit more visible on like a global scale. And again, we have other pipers out there making a bit of a name for themselves, and like Finbar Fury and, you know, a few others, that sort of thing. And the next big boom we had in uilleann piping was down to maybe one of two things. It's either going to be Riverdance in the 1990s, or it's going to be the film Braveheart, or maybe it's Titanic. Maybe three things. Okay, so uilleann piping in the 90s was huge. Loads of people got into the instrument. It was more visible on a global scale. It was showing up in films, it was showing up on the TV, it was on soundtracks, all that sort of crack. And yeah, maybe it's to do with like Riverdance featuring a piper prominently in the sound, or maybe it's to do with like Titanic, when they're playing down the bunks and they've got a bit of a session going on, doing the old deet on Sean Ryan's polka. And we're probably seeing another golden era, I guess, of Celtic cool. Maybe not another Celtic Tiger, but maybe a Celtic cool. We got bands like Mary Wallopers or Lankum who feature the pipes in them. And there's a host of online resources today as well, like on YouTube or on the NPU Uilleann website. And another really nice thing that's happened perhaps recently as well, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that UNESCO has recognised uilleann piping as an intangible part of Irish history. And we're kind of in a better place than we've ever been, really. There's an extremely high level of good quality bagpipes out there available to buy, good makers out there. There's apparently over 7,000 pipers worldwide, and we have groups popping up. Yeah, like I said, those sort of like piping self-help support groups popping up around the world in like Japan, Argentina. And we're also seeing a lot more female uilleann pipers, which can only be a good thing as well, because like I said, over the course of the instrument, it's kind of largely been a male dominated experience. So yeah, it's great to see more of the female uilleann pipers out there as well. And the pipes are turning up in more places than ever before as well, with like, you know, TV shows and films and soundtracks and random bands and metal music and all the rest of it. So that's kind of where we are today with uilleann piping, and maybe that's a good time to call it a day on this video. So thank you very much for watching if you got this far. If you are interested in uilleann piping and you want to hear what instruments from all those different eras sound like, you can have a look at my Bandcamp, have a look at my music. I've got a new CD out with all this sort of stuff on it, on LP as well. Or have a look through my YouTube. I've got lots of other little videos about uilleann piping. Maybe you'll find something that tickles your interest on there as well. So thanks for watching if you made it this far. And maybe I'll leave you with a tune. Alright, take it easy. See you again soon. Happy piping.